All right, so this is River Running in Mathematics. I'm Chuck Newberg for those that don't know me. And so this talk was inspired a little bit about a river trip we did last summer and some of the math behind it. Unfortunately, one of my great slides, one of the great data graphs, we all deleted it. Nobody could find a copy of it. So I have something I'll tell you about though. So, all right, so we're going to look at some of the math available for the decision making in river running. So what math, what data do we get to look at as river runners to decide, are we going to run or not run? When do we want to put in for permits and so forth? And then we'll talk briefly about, who's involved in this mathematics? Who's going out and getting this data, things like that? Where are some other careers that might have some math in it that aren't directly related to mathematics? So, all right, so here's an interesting picture. I don't know how that shows here. This is the put-in of the middle fork of the Salmon River. The middle fork of the Salmon River, it's like the mecca of river trips, Grand Canyon and the middle fork. If you see here, you see this ramp. This is a long ramp. You slide your rafts down here, and then you tie up in here. This is early in the day. Towards the end of the day, there will be rafts all tied out here. You have to climb over each person's boat to get to your raft. If you look, there I am right there in our group. We got down early this day, so we got a good spot. We didn't have to fight the outfitters or anything like that. But it's kind of a fun, you know you're doing the real deal when you're belaying your raft down to the river. So the question was, when we put the raft on the ramp, do we ride it? And you can ride it all the way down, except for the fact that the friction's a great, really don't want your raft going down too fast. There has been stories, I've never seen it, where people have actually friction burned the bottoms of the raft and the rafts don't hold air. And that's a nightmare because now your raft's down here, you got to repair it, and the parking lot's up there. And so it's a nightmare. So, and there's not a lot of space down on this beach to work. It's a nightmare of a spot. Interesting question. No, that's a great question. We'll have more to that here in a second, by the way. So let's add some math in here. And this is really, my college algebra, this is where I was inspired. So definition, a function is a relation from a set of inputs to a set of possible outputs, where each input is related to exactly one output. So this is what our college level function, definition of a function. And the more importantly, we use functions to what? Describe situations, to analyze, and what? Make predictions. So we're going to look at some of the functions the Forest Service and the NOAA and they provide us. So, all right, and just a reminder, we can represent functions with what? Graphs. And a function is a relationship between at least two quantities, and the graphs help show that relationship. All right, so let's talk about the Mecca trip. If you had to say in whitewater rafting, there's the Grand Canyon, rafting the Colorado rivers, the number one, and the number two trip you could link together is called turning the corner. And turning the corner is two trips linked together. And so the challenge as a river runner is to get back-to-back river permits. So you gotta have the ability to get off one river and keep going down the next stretch. So you gotta link up two permits. And the mathematics behind that, the planning, sometimes is, I know one of the big power guys out at the power plant, I think he never worked. I think all he did was plan his river permit season. So, all right, so trip one. The first trip, this is the middle fork of the Salmon River. It has an early season, May 28th to September 3rd. This is when the permit season is. You can launch earlier than that, but the problem is in Idaho, if you try to launch earlier, the road may not be open. So you actually have to run a more extreme river to get to the river and run falls called Dagger Falls, which I don't have a picture of, I should. Trip two is the main Salmon River, and its regular season permit is the 20th through the 7th. So there is some overlap, but you can get a preseason permit. Those are first come, first served. So ideally what we like to do is draw a river permit towards the early June and then hopefully get off the river and be able to pick up a preseason permit. That was our goal that year. All right, so now here's a fun little picture. This is a buddy of mine named Joe. He probably wouldn't be happy that I'm showing this picture of him. He is literally showering. This is a hot water shower on the middle fork of the Salmon River. There's a hot springs up here, and there's a log right here, and it puts out this beautiful stream of hot water. And so this is like day 3, and it's a nice spot to take a shower. Sorry, I don't have any pictures of me showering. So, all right, so let's look here. So this river here, so this is Stanley, Idaho. And down here is the start of the Middle Fork. It's smack dab in the middle of Frank Church. So the first trip is coming up right to here. So that's where you'd get off the Middle Fork. And then if you're lucky, you turn the corner and go to down here to what's called Carey Creek. And that gets you off on the west side of Idaho, near Riggins, Idaho. So this stretch here takes about 7 days to do, and then this stretch here takes about 7 days. So if you can link the corner, it's a 14-day raft trip, which is awesome. So, and you talk about the mecca of trips. The Grand Canyon's 16 days to 25, but 14 is pretty good too. So, all right, Indian Creek's an interesting spot because that's where in low water you can fly in there. That's where some of the outfitters fly in their tourists because they don't want to run. This upper stretch is really dicey. When you get off that, when you launch, you're in like class 4, class 5 whitewater. You don't want to be fiddling with your boat. You got to be ready to go. So this first part's really technical and really tricky. And then when you get to here, the water gets bigger and the rapids get monstrous. And then over here, the rapids are big, but they're not as nearly as technical as the Middle Fork. So, all right. So factors that go into the permit. So first off, when do you permits a lottery system. So we put in for our permits in January. So I've already thought about when I'm going to put in permits. So what went into some of my ideas? Well, first off, the Idaho snowpack. And so for us, when we're up in Idaho, we're skiing over Christmas, we're checking out the snowpack. This year is a pretty good year, so I felt like we don't have to go quite as early. Maybe we'll push it off towards early June, not late May for the Middle Fork. The Idaho weather. So we're kind of watching the weather. We're also kind of looking at long-term forecast. So I want to be interested in, is the spring supposed to be really cold and wet? If the spring's really cold and wet, then the snowpack's not going to melt as soon. So I might want to go in for a later date. If they're predicting that it's going to be an early spring, really warm spring, I'm going to move up my date a little bit. So that's one thing we're always looking at. Permit dates. Sometimes there's blockage. COVID gave us some blocked out dates. Forest fires sometimes block out dates, so you always have to look at, well, what dates are already blocked out because last year's group gets to go or they're going to do some rehab on the river. And then you always have to look at people's work and personal schedules. So you're trying to get a permit so that you and 10 of your friends can also go. So you kind of balance it out because nobody really goes by themselves. And then we always ask the question, why do people get married during rafting season? And I will tell you right now, my nephews and nieces, those who did not get married during rafting season got double the money than the other ones. So, and they will tell you that's the honest truth. So, all right. And so here, Julie, here are my feet. I am going down the ramp right there. And that's like the last 15 feet. All right, so yes. And this is a special day. I was the first boat down the ramp that day. That is like unheard of. What happened is we went in 2 nights early and I literally put my boat on the ramp the night before. I had to be first. It was a little territorial there. So I've never been first. Usually we're like last down. We're wondering if we're going to get on the river. All right. So let's look at some of historical data. So here's the graphs I'm looking at. And so I'll let everybody, we can pass out a copy. I know this is small. I printed off copies for everybody. This is U.S. Forest Service data right here. So this is what the Forest Service looks at, is what they have up on the put-ins at the river, what they talk about and things like that. And let's talk about, so first off, you have historical the flows of the river starting in what, May 1st through what, September 28th. So this is May through September. And you have different years here. So you can see 2021, whatever color that is. So we have the historical flows there. And so up here you see the hazard ratings for the Middle Fork. And so you see below 2 feet, it's a low boating level. and that is really rocky. I ran the Middle Fork at 1.5 feet. That's where my boat got the name Slippery Pickle, because it slid over all the rocks while everybody else got stuck. Turned out being lazy and not topping off your rafts in the morning had its advantages. A soft raft rolls over rocks easier than tight rafts. 2 to 5 feet, that's the sweet spot. So when the gauge has, say, there's a little gauge, so like a measuring they look at, when it's at 2 to 5 feet, that's the sweet spot. 2.5 feet is like the prime time of running. The rapids are all fun. They're nothing, there's some technical still, but they're not. For me, ideally, I like to run between 3 and 5 feet if I'm taking family. And then 5 to 6 is considered hazardous, although it's certainly runnable. And then 6 to 7, they call it extremely hazardous. And it's extremely hazardous because if you make a mistake, you may have a long ways for a rescue. But at the other side, if you're going with a good group, there's less people on the river. And then above 7 feet is really for the experts only. Yeah. We've run it at 6.5.
Oh my gosh.
So, and it really wasn't that scary. So.
Do you know why it was so high in 2017?
No, I don't know why in 2017, other than it must have been a really big snowpack year. I mean, so we're really talking about that. Okay, so now, let's say I want to try to figure out what dates I'm going to put in for, and I want the flow between, 3 and 5 feet. What am I going to do? I'm going to come over here. I'm going to come across to 3, and I might look and I try to get 3 across and up to 5. So I'm kind of looking at this little area right here. And if I come down, what's it looking like? 6.5 through 6:20, somewhere in middle June is like the ideal spot. And early on, this is what river runners were looking at. They'd look at graphs like this produced by the Forest Service, and we'd say, okay, I want to run around 3 feet, and I'd come across, and it looks like, mid-June there and that. So that's kind of the data we'd look at. So other data we have access to. The National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration, they also produce some data. And here is the data, and this is the graph I hope to have, and nobody had it still on their email. This is the Middle Fork salmon, so this is a gauge there on the Middle Fork. I believe it's at the Middle Fork Lodge. And here's the actual data of what they've been recording for the last 5 days. Then right here they have 3 days of forecast, so they've forecasted. This would be based off of the weather and things like that. And then past there, they're looking at here the trend. And the trend is just based off of historical data. So they give us what's going on in the past right up to this day. They tell us what they're going to predict 3 days out, and then they give it a historical. So what happened on the Middle Fork was when we were looking at turning the corner, we had the permits all lined up. And I can't remember what day we were supposed to launch. It was around June, we'll say June 10th. And the Middle Fork right around then was hovering around 7 feet, but dropping. So it's high water. And part of our group had already done it once. We run with some extreme boaters, and they had had such a bad time, literally like one guy referred to it as Russian roulette, because every time there was a log jam around the next corner. And so he bagged out. And what had shown was, not only was it at 7 feet, but it was predicted to go up to 8 feet. And then it even had some other predictions that it was going to possibly go to 8.5 feet, depending on the weather storm. So we're sitting there looking at this, and we're looking at, well, there's already one log jam, and so we're having to decide that. So some other data there. Oh, so here's a fun little photo. This is a camp at on the Middle Fork. I don't remember the name of the camp, but just to show you, you're never too old to wear onesies. So these are not me, but these are some guys I raft with, and this guy here is a world-class kayaker, and he just loves wearing his bunny onesie around camp at night. So who knows? So all right, so you're never too old to wear a onesie. So tell Miguel that. So all right. Other data. So this is the U.S. Geological Survey, the National Water Dashboard. How many of us knew there was a National Water Dashboard? Turns out there is monitors all over the place. So if you want to know how a river's flowing, what its temperature is, things like that, you can go and find different meters here. So you can kind of tell what states are kind of dry here. You can see there's not a lot of rivers out in eastern Oregon and Nevada there. Wyoming, we don't have a lot of gauges in here. You will see on the Snake River up south of Jackson, if you've ever done that stretch where the cable car is, they have a gauge there they drop in, so that's one of the sites there. And so as we get closer, we start zooming in on the gauges on the Middle Fork and the gauges on the salmon and really start looking at what's kind of going on, what's the water temperature, things like that. Is it going up and down during the day? All types of things we start looking at there. This takes a while to load up. I'm not going to go into any specifics there. Then you can also get the Advanced Hydrologic Prediction Service. So this is a new one. This one just came out about 4 or 5 years ago. I had not even seen this one until we had our last summer's trip. So this one here, and this one gives 2.5 months out. So this is a 2.5 month forecast. And what it is of the Middle Fork. And the darker the color, the more predicted it is to be at that flow. So this is a 95% chance that the flow is going to be around 2.5 feet on April 25th. So we have all this data. And so this was the other graph we were looking at, and they had like a 20% chance on that graph that it was going to go to 8 feet. So, and I wouldn't let Stacy go. So, all right. John Freeman, I had no problem taking him. So, all right. So what can happen on the river? Well, lots of things can happen on the river. This is a photo from last year. And luckily we weren't on the river. I should go ahead and tell you the story there. So we actually decided we were not going to run the Middle Fork. But we did run the main salmon at 30,000 CFS, and it was monstrous as well, and it was a lot of fun. So, and there was nobody on the river, so that was fun. So what can happen on the river? So this was last summer, almost about the same time as we were on the river. This is on the Middle Fork though. There it is. That is the Middle Fork. It had had a landslide come in, and it is actually dammed. The river stopped until that built up enough to flush that out. So now this season, one of the things everybody's worried about is what's the river going to be like? So a lot of this was caused by rain, but the real instigator was forest fires the previous seasons. Those rains washed out, flash floods, they bring in all this debris. These are the things that we really worry about on rivers, is those logs coming down and having issues with those. So this, I don't remember where, I think this is Pistol Creek, which is a monstrous rapid. And I'm not sure, I think it blew out in a day. So just imagine you're that rafter down below and you're wondering, why did the river stop? So, and this picture, I don't know who took this picture, but they actually walked back up to see why it stopped, and they got up to here. So, and so that's a very interesting thing. The first time I ran the Middle Fork, we had a couple of flash floods, and we woke up the next morning and the river looked like chocolate milk. There was no white on it. It smelt like earth. It was almost nauseating. Yeah, and it took me 4 years to get the mud off my raft. I mean, scrubbed it, it just stuck to it. So, all right, so we're, as we're looking at the weather and the forecast, we're always worried about things like this happening. And so that's why we try to monitor their data. Some people even have it on their phones, and you can get sat data, things like that down there. So, all right, so let's think a little bit about careers. Well, first off, who gets to go out and collect the data? Forest Service employees, all those type of people. So biologists, grad students, there's all types of people going out there and doing assessments, collecting that data, bringing it back in. Then you have statisticians and water hydrology technicians. They're manipulating that data to produce this graphs for us. So if you like mathematics, but you don't want to think about a career in math, which is why I don't know, but there are all types of other jobs out there that use math and look at this data. So who's involved in the math? All types of people. So those people that do their job well make us happy floating down the Middle Fork and Salmon River. By the way, that is my buddy Joe there after he showered. Look how clean he is. He always has a nice umbrella. So his wife does not have an umbrella. So I don't know why. So, all right. And so just to tease you a little bit, this is Tappan Falls. This was, I think 3 years ago, 2 years ago. This was a weird trip. Buddies called up and said, hey, we got a May 28th permit. And it doesn't look like it's going to be high water. It was still pretty early. I'm like, a May 28th permit? And it's not going to be high water? So I was like, count me in. And turned out in May in Idaho, it was already like 85 degrees, which is unheard of. Didn't have to wear dry suits, didn't have to wear wetsuits. There was nobody on the river because it's May. Nobody likes to run 8 feet high water. It was like 2.5 feet. It was like the sweet spot. And there was nobody on there. So this is Tappan Falls. And this is my raft right here. So John Freeman's taking the video of this. And so as we row down here, you'll see a big hole on the left that I luckily missed. So. This is not a big rapid, by the way. All right, so yeah, that's Tappan. I will admit the first time Tappan comes in it has 3 rapids. Tappan's 1, 2, 3, and Tappan Falls. And the first time I ran the Middle Fork, we got up to Tappan Falls and it was gone. It was covered in water, and we came down to Tappan. Must have been Tappan. It wasn't Tappan 2. Must have been Tappan 3, and the landslide had come in. And it dammed up the river there, so that's why Tappan Falls was gone. And it's like a 6-7 foot drop, so think about how much water was backed up there. And so we're looking at Tappan 3, and there's a big monster ponderosa pine in the middle. There looks like there's a far run on the left, and it looks like there's a far run on the right, and nothing in between. And we're throwing sticks in and looking at it and all that stuff. And finally we just said, well, I'm not going left, I'll go right. And all you had to do on the right was run the chute, but then at the bottom there was another root ball standing there, and you had to swing out and miss it. Looked really scary, but actually it turned out to be a simple move. Yeah, so it's always interesting when you're running these rivers. So, all right, so let's look at a little wow here. What's the most expensive toilet you've ever seen?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I want to know at Home Depot.
Ready for $1 million toilet? Sorry, Donald Trump. There it is. This is a 2-seater solar ceramic or a solar composting, nice cedar chips. This is at the Indian Springs airstrip on the Middle Fork. They fly in so many people there, they had to put in a better outhouse system. It took them about $1 million to build this. And my son Parker will be happy to know I did not show the slide of him on the toilet. I have that, but I'm not going to show it in there. I'm saving it for his girlfriend. So, all right. So, family fun. So let's look at a little family fun. This is on the main salmon. So here's part of my family. That is Stacy right there. I like to show this picture there. That is Parker. There's the college's raft. My wife is one of the few lucky ones who ran all 3 sides. This is Big Mallard, this Big Mallard rock there. She went left, the raft went right, and soon Parker falls out and she went left, raft goes over the center, and Parker goes out and swims the right-hand side. So
I was following him, never follow him.
Never. Parker will tell you that too. So I take advanced lines. So, all right, questions. Julie already asked one good question, and I had the answer, by the way. Any questions? So no questions. So I think I have one more. Oh, so here's my ending picture. Joe would have been showering down below here. This is sunflower hot springs on the Middle Fork, and you can camp. If you're lucky on the Middle Fork, Middle Fork has lots of hot springs, and you usually can get one camp a trip on hot springs. And this year we got Sunflower, one because we were a small group that year, and this pool is nice. This pool is really hot, and then the shower's down below there, and it's awesome. So, and so if no questions, that is it. So yeah.
See any grizzlies?
Is that?
Any grizzlies?
Not in the Middle Fork.
Repeat the question?
Yeah. Did I see any grizzlies? No. Matter of fact, I don't even know if there's grizzlies in the state of Idaho yet.
They're up farther in the Bitterroots,
Oh,
so
yeah.
the panhandle of Idaho. They're not, currently they're not in the Frank Church Wilderness.
Yeah. We'll see bighorn sheep and lots of sheep.
Did you stop to fish?
No.
Oh.
No, I don't fish. So we did have some people fishing on this trip, and matter of fact, we found out that Fish and Game can be very sneaky because we came around a corner and they had a blind all set up, taking it, and they pulled over one of the members of the group to check out his things, and he wasn't fishing with barbed hooks, but he still had them in his thing, so they gave him a warning, and they snipped off all of them. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, so no, I never fish.
Can you get to those hot springs without doing the river ride?
Nope, you have to.
I know.
You have. There's the only one. There are some other ones you can get to, Loon Creek Hot Springs, but it's a 20-mile hike down to it, and it's to get to the trailhead, it's like 4 hours to pavement, from pavement. I've hiked the Loon Creek Hot Springs when I lived in the backcountry.
How many hours do you raft a day?
Oh, that's a good question.
You
So-
said 7 days.
Yeah, so typically 3 to 4 hours. Takes an hour and a half to load your boats up, de-rig camp, 3 or 4 hours on the river, and then an hour and a half to set up camp. So yeah, so rarely do you like to do long days. If you're doing long days, it's usually mean you're doing lots of miles. You didn't get up early, and you're fighting the upriver breeze. So good question. So I hate those people that sleep till noon on river trips.
So, is it kind of like tubing? Like, do you guys have a car at the end? And one at the beginning?
Yeah, so you hire a shuttle service.
Okay.
So you pay to have your vehicle shuttled. The Middle Fork, that was like a $500 bill. So it's not expensive. So you definitely carpool. So, and now a funny story about this. Last year they had a new group doing some car shuttling, a new company, or a couple years old. Well, they shuttled rigs and then put them down low and then high water came up. So they had rigs getting like near that. They had the sheriffs having to go out and break into them, tow them out, and things like that. One cars were missing, all types of things. So, but yeah, the shuttle is an important part. You usually hire somebody because you usually don't have any friends that will drive for you.
Yeah.
So, any other good questions? So, all right. Well, our time is up. Oh.